The DCEU is over. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another videos. Today I got my review of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, aka Aquaman 2, and you heard that right up front. This is the final film from the DCEU. Before I give you guys my thoughts on this thing, be sure to hit that like button. Comment down below your predictions and expectations if you have not yet seen it, as well as your thoughts on this one if you have seen the movie as of watching this video. Subscribe to that notification bell to help reach my goal of 100,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. And go show some love to the Unusual Couple podcast for weekly episodes with myself and my girlfriend Cam. We have a blast with it over there. So if I'm being completely honest, I had low expectations for this movie just because the last few DCEU films have missed the mark for me, and they kind of just feel like they had to get pumped out to try and make some money, because ever since James Gunn came on board to reboot this whole thing, they were stuck with a few projects that were just lingering, and they were like, I guess we should release these, right? Even though they're not going anywhere. So I went in expecting this to be, you know, meh at best, and I walked out going, yeah, felt pretty much nothing with this one. So I'll start with some pros, however. It's not like the movie was an absolute dumpster fire, and I didn't hate it. It was just a really poorly made movie that I felt no emotional connection to. So the only bright, shining light in this film is the chemistry between Jason Momoa, who plays Aquaman, and Patrick Wilson, who plays his brother Orm. During the middle of this movie, they have a lot of scenes together, and they just have an undeniable chemistry. They made the best of what they were given, I feel, and they had some humor that worked for me. I liked seeing them fight back to back. You know, I love a good brotherhood relationship in a movie, and that by far was the shining light of this film. Anything else pretty much didn't work for me. In fact, the rest of this video is going to be cons. I hate to be negative on movies, but that's what I got to do here. It starts with one thing in particular that you cannot look past, literally, the visual effects in this film. Whew, it's a mess from the start to the moment the credits roll. Visually, this film is off. And say what you will about the first Aquaman, I think it's hit or miss visually, but this movie, for the most part, I was like, oh my gosh, this looks awful. The underwater special effects just look atrocious. It's like a huge step down from Aquaman to the Lost Kingdom in terms of the visual effects, in my opinion at least. There were certain moments with Patrick Wilson's character, with Mira, with anyone, you name it, where they're talking underwater and it was just like discombobulated. It looked so artificial that it removed me from the movie. I know the concept of an Aquaman movie alone is pretty hard to get on board with, but it just was so awful that it distracted me the entire runtime pretty much. On top of that, this movie's all over the place in terms of story and plot. Black Manta returns as the villain of the film, and while he is technically the villain, they introduce another entity in another kingdom that sort of tries to be the big bad villain, but it comes off as so one note and unfortunately copy-paste. A lot of the recent DCEU films have had the most generic villains ever. I think of Black Adam, I think of Blue Beetle, where they don't really have any motives, we don't know who they even are really, and it just is super rushed and honestly forced into the film to have some sort of villainous presence, and that's how it is in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Black Manta comes in contact with some entity, I don't want to say too much here, and essentially that entity is acting through him for a lot of the film. Obviously, Black Manta still had his motives, but this took them and dialed them up to 1,000, and we don't really know why or who this person is for most of the movie. It's really frustrating when a comic book film has a villain that's like, I want to take over the world, or I want to destroy the world. It comes off like Transformers Rise of the Beast in a way where it's just the most AI. I hate to use that term because I know it's become like cliche and cringe almost, but it's like, it is an AI type situation where a robot probably wrote this villain, and it's unfortunate. You know, I think given the circumstances surrounding this movie, it probably turned out the best it could have been. I know it went through production hell for years, and there was a point in time where Michael Keaton's Batman was in this film. There was a point in time where Ben Affleck's Batman was in this film. So this movie's been through the ringer, unfortunately. Like, I'm not going to fault James Wan. He signed on to do this movie, and he probably had a creative vision for it, and then obviously the studio interfered, and then DC decided, hey, we're going to reboot the whole damn thing, so this movie's not really going to matter at the end of the day. And that probably took a creative hit to the film as well. So even though the movie is pretty unmemorable, I feel like James Wan probably did the best he could. I still love him. He's one of the best horror filmmakers of our time, in my opinion. But unfortunately, he doesn't really have much of a directorial presence here. His distinctive flair, when I think of his horror films like The Conjuring, Insidious, even Malignant, like, I don't feel that, and I didn't really feel that in the first Aquaman either. These aren't really James Wan films. They are products pumped out by Warner Bros. And DC to try and make some money, and because of that, they feel pretty lifeless, notably this one. In fact, in my out-of-theater reaction, I said, I feel like Homelander, that meme, you know, where he's sitting in the theater just blankly staring at the screen. That's how I felt during this movie, because I wasn't like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. I just felt nothing. The humor missed the mark entirely for me. But the most frustrating part about this movie was how it treats the audience like we're all 4 years old. There would be moments, I kid you not, and I heard laughter in my row as well from how stupid it was, where text would come up on screen to let the audience know where we are, and then it would zoom out and more text would come up on the screen to show the audience where we just went, as if we need to have our hand held throughout the entire film. One time in particular, it was laughable. There's a mission that Black Manta goes on in the film early on, and it like shows the text, and then it shows the text again into the place he just entered. Like, we heard the entire exposition dump. Sidebar, there's a lot of exposition dumps in this film that explain useless and boring information. But back on track, he goes in to a new location that's been established by this exposition dump. So we know where he is, but it still pops up on screen. I've never seen a movie use text on screen this much to signify where we are, because it just acts like everyone is stupid and has no brain cells, and that's just really infuriating as a viewer when you're like, damn, this movie's treating us like we're just dumb, and that's unfortunate. Look, I could sit here and go on and on for days, but the movie's painfully unmemorable, and no one really wanted to be here. You could really tell that. Like, aside from Momoa and Patrick Wilson, who are probably like, hell yeah, we have scenes together and we're doing this stupid scene, let's just get it done and have some fun with it. Everyone else is phoning it in. Nicole Kidman's in this movie. Dolph Lundgren's in this movie. And I feel bad for them having to deliver some of the lines here. You can tell they're there for the paycheck, and honestly, I have to respect it at that point, because they know this movie's gonna flop. They know this movie isn't going anywhere, and so they just had to tough it out. I mean, they filmed this thing, what, 2 years ago probably, so they were just enduring it. Amber Heard is the elephant in the room here. Obviously, there's some controversy surrounding her. I'm not going to get into all that right now, but she is in the movie for more than one scene. She's in it a decent amount, and they do sort of write a way to make her not in a bulk of the middle of the film, but she is in some crucial scenes, and so I just feel like I'm putting that out there. If you guys have an opinion on that, there you go. She's in the movie for more than just one scene, if that's what you needed to hear. Look, at the end of the day, this is not the worst movie I've ever seen, but me having to say that in a review should be an indicator of the fact that it's not a very good movie. I don't know if it's the worst DCEU movie of the year. All four of them missed for me. Every single one of them. And the DCEU went out with an absolute whimper. But I said this in my out-of-theater reaction, and I stand by it now. Wasn't the whole franchise sort of a whimper? No one really ever cared. None of these movies were ever mega hits when you compare them to Marvel. And the fact that people are still clamoring for Zack Snyder to return is nuts. This franchise is deader than dead, and hopefully James Gunn can reignite it with the DCU, starting with Superman Legacy in 2025. But at the end of the day, when it comes to Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, aside from some memorable moments with Patrick Wilson and Jason Momoa, this thing is painfully unmemorable. It has no heart, it feels lifeless, and just like a movie that's put out there to be like, you know what, this movie's not going anywhere, and it's not going to progress DC, and no one really cared about making it, let's just try and make something off it by promoting it as, oh, this 3D must-see experience. And at the end of the day, guys, this movie kind of stinks, but I've seen worse movies this year. I literally felt nothing. I walked into the theater, I sat down for 2 hours and 4 minutes, and I walked out, and I was not a changed man. I kind of forgot about it as I was driving home, actually. So, I've seen this movie. I don't recommend it. Go see something else this holiday season, or stay home and watch sports or just Christmas movies. So, yeah, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. The DCU's over. And to be completely honest with you, it feels good to say that. But those are just my honest thoughts on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Let me know yours in the comments down below, and be sure to hit that like button. I hate having to just flame movies, but that's the case here. There's not much positive to talk about with the Lost Kingdom. But be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 100,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. And stay tuned for more DC content coming soon, including my final ever ranking of the DCEU films. But that'll do it. Thank you guys as always, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.